Imagine this. Your parents pour their life savings and 30 years of medical expertise into turning your childhood home into a cozy nursing home for 8 sweet elderly folks. Then one morning, the HOA sends a wrecking ball to demolish it, while residents are still inside. But when corruption gets exposed, sometimes justice needs a bulldozer and a few bags of quick-dry cement. What would you do if the HOA demolished your family's dream and left seniors homeless? Comment below where you're watching from. Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this. "They're trying to kick us out again," Mom whispered, as she handed me the certified letter with the HOA logo. My stomach dropped. This was the third warning this year. I looked through our front window at Mrs. Jenkins across the street, pretending to trim her already perfect hedges while watching our house. I never imagined I'd be at war with our homeowners association. 5 years ago, my parents converted our family home in Pinecrest Valley into Golden Sunset Care, a small nursing home for elderly folks who needed extra help but didn't want to live in those giant, cold facilities. My dad, a retired doctor, and Mom, a nurse for 30 years, poured not just their savings, but their hearts into making it special. "Give me that," I said, taking the letter. The fancy words couldn't hide the threat. Cease all business operations within 30 days or face legal action. They can't do this. We have permits. Dad shuffled in from the sunroom where he'd been playing chess with Mr. Abernathy, one of our 8 residents. "Jenny, we've been through this before. Mrs. Jenkins doesn't care about permits. She wants us gone." I watched through the window as Mrs. Jenkins's son, Derek, pulled up in his shiny black BMW. He ran a massive elder care chain 2 towns over, charging triple what my parents did every month. He tried to buy our property every month. My parents refused. "I'll handle this," I promised. As a paralegal at Thompson and Hart, I had some legal knowledge. Not enough to fight a whole HOA, maybe, but enough to buy time. The following morning, I walked straight to Mrs. Jenkins's house instead of my car. Her garden gnomes seemed to glare at me as I knocked. When she opened the door, her face hardened. "Jennifer," she said, not inviting me in. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to talk about the letter," I said, trying to sound friendly. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. Our permits are in order." "It's not about permits anymore," she interrupted. "It's about property values. The board has decided that a commercial business doesn't belong in our neighborhood." Commercial? We're talking about 8 elderly people living in a home environment. The ambulance has only come twice this year. Twice too many. And what about all those visitors? "Those cars?" She tapped her foot. "The board meeting is on Thursday. You can plead your case, but the decision is practically made." As I turned to leave, I noticed Derek sitting in her living room, pretending to look at his phone. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away. That night, as I helped Mrs. Cooper into bed, she was 91 and remembered the Great Depression. She gripped my hand. "Are they going to make us leave, dear?" "No," I promised. "I won't let them." The board meeting was a joke. 7 people sat at a long table, Mrs. Jenkins in the center with her permanent scowl. I presented our permits, testimonials from neighbors who supported us, even a letter from the mayor praising our work. It didn't matter. "We voted," Mrs. Jenkins announced before I even finished. "Golden Sunset Care violates our covenant regarding businesses in residential areas. You have 30 days to relocate your clients." "Residents," I corrected. "And some of them have lived in this neighborhood longer than you have." "Regardless," she continued, "we expect full compliance." That weekend, the harassment kicked up. HOA inspectors came by daily, measuring grass height and checking for paint chips. They fined us for a crack in the sidewalk, for a bird feeder that was 2 inches too low, for Mr. Wilson's wheelchair ramp being an unapproved structural addition. I filed appeals, called the county, even reached out to a local reporter who seemed interested, but then suddenly stopped returning my calls. We should just sell. Mom said one night after another, $500 fine arrived for improper waste disposal because Mr. Abernathy's oxygen tank delivery had left a box on our porch for an hour. No, I insisted. This is our home. Their home. I pointed to the living room where several residents were watching Jeopardy, calling out answers and laughing together. Then came the offer letter. Derek Jenkins's company would buy our house for 20% above market value with a 48-hour deadline to accept. My parents looked tempted, worn down by months of fighting. "Let me try one more thing," I begged. That night, I drove to the county records office and dug through old property maps. Hours later, I found what I needed: the original subdivision plan from 1973, before the HOA existed. It showed clearly that our property was zoned differently than the others, with special provisions for multifamily use. The next morning, I called Tanya, a lawyer friend from college. "This might work," she said after reviewing my findings. "It's a grandfather clause. Their covenant can't override it." I was preparing to bring this to the next HOA meeting when my parents announced they needed to attend a medical conference in Chicago. It was important. Dad was presenting his research on elder care. "Go," I insisted. "I can handle things here for 2 weeks." The night before they left, I helped them pack while the residents had a movie night downstairs. Mom hugged me tight. "Don't do anything crazy while we're gone," she teased. "Never," I grinned back. I waved goodbye from our front porch as they drove away, unaware that by the time they returned, our world would be completely destroyed. That evening, I noticed unusual activity at the HOA office. Cars coming and going late, lights on past midnight. Through binoculars, I could see Mrs. Jenkins gesturing angrily while Derek nodded along. "Something's wrong," I told Tanya on the phone. "Document everything," she advised. "I'll stop by tomorrow." But tomorrow came with a sound that still haunts my dreams. The grinding gears of heavy machinery rolling down our quiet street at dawn. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window just in time to see a massive wrecking ball swing toward our home. The screech of metal against brick jolted me into action. I sprinted downstairs in my pajamas, nearly colliding with Mr. Wilson, who was trying to maneuver his wheelchair toward the commotion. "What's happening?" he asked, fear cracking his normally steady voice. "Get everyone to the back door," I ordered, heart hammering against my ribs. "Now!" Outside, a nightmare unfolded in slow motion. A yellow demolition crane loomed over our front yard, its wrecking ball already swinging for a second hit. The first had torn a jagged hole through our living room wall, exposing furniture like a grotesque dollhouse. Mrs. Jenkins stood behind a hastily erected safety barrier, clipboard in hand, face impassive as stone. "Stop!" I screamed, running toward the operator. "There are people inside." The man hesitated, hand on the lever, looking to Mrs. Jenkins for direction. She nodded coldly, and the ball swung again. "Section 8, Paragraph 4, she announced, holding up a document with an official-looking seal. "No commercial enterprises in residential areas. The board has determined your business is in violation of covenant restrictions. This is insane." I lunged toward her but was blocked by 2 security guards I hadn't noticed before. "You can't just demolish an occupied building. We have permits. We have residents." The wrecking ball crashed through my parents' bedroom, sending photo frames and medicine bottles raining down. Mrs. Reynolds, our oldest resident at 94, began to sob behind me. I turned to see all 8 elderly residents huddled in our driveway in their nightclothes, confused and terrified. "Those permits were invalidated yesterday," Mrs. Jenkins replied, not meeting my eyes. "Emergency board decision. Unanimous. We have court approval." She waved a paper that I couldn't read from where I stood. "Court approval? That's impossible. I wasn't notified of any hearing. Notice was delivered." Her thin smile made my blood boil. "Perhaps you missed it." The third swing took out the kitchen. Glass shattered across our herb garden, where Dad grew mint for Mrs. Cooper's tea. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. Emergency services, I gasped. They're demolishing our nursing home with people still evacuating. I looked up to see Derek Jenkins watching from his BMW parked across the street. He wasn't even trying to hide his satisfaction. The police arrived 15 minutes later. 15 minutes of helpless horror as I moved our residents to the neighbor's yard. Some in wheelchairs, some barely able to walk, all in shock. By then, half our home was reduced to splintered wood and crushed drywall. Officer Martinez approached, looking confused. We received reports of an unauthorized demolition. I pointed frantically at the ongoing destruction. They're demolishing our nursing home without warning. We have permits. Mrs. Jenkins smoothly intercepted him, presenting a folder of documents. Everything is in order, officer. Court-approved emergency demolition due to structural safety concerns and zoning violations. Structural concerns? I nearly screamed. That's a lie. Ma'am, please calm down, Officer Martinez said, reviewing the papers. He frowned, looked at the demolition, then back at the papers. These appear legitimate. They can't be. Let me see. I reached for the documents. Mrs. Jenkins pulled them away. These are official court papers. I don't have to show them to you. Actually, Officer Martinez began, if this is her property, it's HOA property now. Mrs. Jenkins cut in. Foreclosure for unpaid fines, completed yesterday. My knees nearly buckled. That's impossible. We paid everything, not the special assessment. $25,000 for covenant violations, due immediately upon notification. What notification? I never received. Delivered by certified mail yesterday. She smiled thinly. Not my fault if you didn't check your mailbox. Officer Martinez looked uncomfortable. I'll need to call this in. Verify these orders. By all means, Mrs. Jenkins replied confidently. While he returned to his cruiser, I rushed back to our residence. Mrs. Cooper was having chest pains. Mr. Abernathy couldn't find his heart medication. It was still inside, in the kitchen cabinet, now reduced to splinters. We need an ambulance, I told a second officer who had arrived. She nodded and radioed it in. The demolition continued while Officer Martinez made calls. Each swing of the wrecking ball felt like it was hitting my own body. Mr. Wilson's prized record collection, Mom's handmade quilts, Dad's medical library, all pulverized while we watched. My phone buzzed. Tanya. Where are you? She demanded without greeting. I'm at your house, but they're demolishing it, I choked out. Right now, the HOA. They're claiming foreclosure, structural issues. I don't even know what else. What? That's not possible. I'm on my way. By the time Tanya's car screeched to a halt beside us, our home was barely recognizable. The east wing, where most residents had their rooms, still stood, but the main structure was a mountain of debris. The ambulance had taken Mrs. Cooper to the hospital for her chest pains, likely brought on by stress. Tanya confronted Mrs. Jenkins immediately. Lawyer mode fully activated. Show me the court order now. Mrs. Jenkins handed over the same folder. Tanya scanned it, her face darkening. This isn't a demolition order. This is a nuisance complaint. It hasn't even been heard by a judge yet. Hope flared in my chest, but Officer Martinez shook his head after reviewing the papers again. There's a judge's signature here. He pointed. Tanya snatched the paper, examined it. This is for a different property. The address is wrong. This is for 1437 Oakwood Lane, not 1437 Oakwood Drive. Mrs. Jenkins's face betrayed nothing. Clerical error. The intent is clear. Intent? Tanya nearly shouted. You can't demolish a home based on intent. This is illegal destruction of property. Officer Martinez finally raised his hand. Stop the demolition, he called to the operator, until we sort this out. But it was too late. As if sensing the tide turning, the wrecking ball had increased its pace during our argument. The final wing collapsed with a thunderous roar, dust billowing into the morning air. All that remained of Golden Sunset Care was a pile of broken dreams and splintered wood. Mrs. Jenkins checked her watch casually. Well, the destruction is complete. Nothing to stop now. This isn't over, Tanya promised darkly. I believe it is. Mrs. Jenkins handed me a final notice. Have the debris cleared by the weekend or face additional fines for neighborhood eyesore violations. She walked away, heels clicking on the sidewalk, leaving 7 elderly people homeless, their possessions crushed, and me standing in the ruins of my family's life work. What do we do now? Mr. Wilson asked softly, his weathered hand trembling on his wheelchair. I knelt beside him, fighting back tears. First, we find you all somewhere safe to stay. Then, I looked at the retreating form of Mrs. Jenkins meeting Derek by his car, their satisfied smiles visible even from a distance. Then we figure out what they're really up to. Little did I know, the property records I discovered were just the first thread in a web of corruption that stretched far beyond our little nursing home. And pulling that thread would unravel secrets that would make a wrecking ball seem gentle by comparison. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. 12 homeless elderly people needed answers, and I had none to give. Mrs. Jenkins had destroyed their home in minutes with that wrecking ball, and now they were crying in a crowded community center, wondering where they would sleep tomorrow. They can't do this, I whispered, staring at the pile of rubble that used to be Golden Sunset Care. There must be something illegal about this. I called Tanya right away. She wasn't just my friend. She was the toughest lawyer in Pinecrest Valley. When I told her what happened, she gasped so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Don't touch anything at the site, she ordered. Take pictures of everything. I'm coming over. Tanya arrived wearing her power suit, her red hair flying in the wind. She walked around the destruction, shaking her head and taking notes. The HOA needs permits for demolition, she said, snapping photos with her phone. Did they show you any paperwork? I handed her the single sheet Mrs. Jenkins had waved in my face, the one about no commercial enterprises. Tanya's eyebrows shot up. This isn't a demolition order. This is just a complaint notice. Something stinks here. That night, we started digging. Tanya knew people at City Hall. I called every neighbor who might have seen something. We spread papers across my kitchen table. HOA meeting minutes, property maps, zoning regulations. Look at this, I said, pointing to a meeting record from 3 months ago. They discussed our nursing home, but my parents were never notified. Tanya frowned. That's violation number 1. We kept going. The more we looked, the more wrong things we found. The HOA had changed their rules about businesses last month. They never held a proper vote. Mrs. Jenkins had signed documents herself that should have needed board approval. Why would she want your parents' place gone so badly? Tanya wondered, rubbing her tired eyes. The answer hit me at 3 a.m. while looking through old newspaper clippings online. There it was, a small article about a new elder care facility opening across town. The smiling owner in the photo, Derek Jenkins, Mrs. Jenkins' son. She destroyed our nursing home to help her son's business, I told Tanya the next morning, showing her the article. Our residents would be forced to go to his place now. Tanya's face turned serious. That's not just mean. That's illegal. Conflict of interest. We needed more proof. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. I requested financial records from the county office. Tanya filed emergency motions. I interviewed former HOA board members who had quit recently. One of them, Mr. Rodriguez, invited me to his garage. I left because things got shady, he whispered, looking around nervously. Jenkins started making decisions without telling anyone. When I questioned her, I got pushed out. He handed me a flash drive. Board meeting recordings, the real ones, not the edited minutes they publish. That night, Tanya and I listened. Our faces grew darker with each recording. Mrs. Jenkins openly discussed how to get rid of that eyesore nursing home and help Derek's business grow. But the smoking gun came from Mrs. Thompson, whose mother had been one of our residents. Her house faced the HOA office, and her security camera had caught something interesting. Mrs. Jenkins meeting her son in the parking lot late one evening, accepting a thick envelope, then hugging. I saved this because something felt wrong, Mrs. Thompson told me, her hands shaking as she handed over the memory card. I never thought it would matter this much. Tanya and I watched the footage in silence. Then she turned to me, her eyes blazing. "This isn't just petty HOA tyranny," she said, sliding the evidence folder across the table. "This is corruption. We have enough to go to the police." I opened the folder, staring at the printout of Mrs. Jenkins taking what looked like a bribe from her own son. My mind raced with possibilities. How much trouble would I get in if I— Tanya held up her hand. "Don't tell me. I don't want to know." She gathered her things to leave but paused at the door. "Whatever you're thinking, remember that those elderly people need you. They need somewhere safe to live, not a revenge fantasy." I nodded. But after she left, I couldn't stop staring at the photo of the HOA office. That smug little building with its manicured shrubs and freshly paved parking lot. The same parking lot where Mrs. Jenkins had taken money to destroy my family's life work. The residents were still in the community center, sleeping on cots. My parents were flying home tomorrow, still unaware of exactly how bad things were. And something inside me had hardened into a decision. I picked up my phone and searched. Construction equipment auctions near me. Your parents' nursing home was torn down by mistake. How awful! The auction manager looked shocked as I handed him cash for the old yellow bulldozer. "What are you going to use this for?" "Landscaping business," I answered with a smile, patting the massive machine, cleaning up some unwanted structures. I drove it onto a rental trailer and headed back to Pinecrest Valley, my heart pounding with each mile. Was I really going to do this? The bulldozer keys felt heavy in my pocket, like they were made of guilt and anger mixed together. My parents arrived home that evening, their faces gray with shock when they saw the pile of rubble where their nursing home had stood. Mom collapsed into Dad's arms, sobbing. 20 years of work, Dad whispered, looking lost. "Where are our residents?" I explained about the community center, about Tanya's legal help, about the evidence we gathered. I didn't mention the bulldozer hidden in a storage unit 3 miles away. "We'll fight this," Dad said, squaring his shoulders. "We'll rebuild." That might have been the end of it. Maybe I would have returned the bulldozer, focused on legal battles instead. But the next morning, a courier delivered an envelope to our door. Inside was a bill for $188,000. Demolition services, it read in bold letters. Mrs. Jenkins had actually sent my parents a bill for destroying their nursing home. I called her immediately. "This is a joke, right?" "Property maintenance is expensive," she replied coolly. "Your parents' illegal business created an unsafe situation. The HOA fixed it. Now you pay for the service." "We'll see you in court," I snapped. "Good luck with that." She laughed. "Your parents should have read the bylaws more carefully. Such a shame about those poor old people." The click of her hanging up echoed in my ears for hours. I spent the next day watching the HOA office from my car, noting when people came and went. The building closed at 5:01 p.m. sharp. One security camera above the front door, another at the back entrance. Both pointed at the doors, leaving blind spots along the sides. No alarm system that I could see. That night, I couldn't sleep. The faces of our elderly residents kept appearing in my mind. Mrs. Rodriguez asking where her cat was. Mr. Wilson wondering if his special chair had survived. All those people, confused and homeless because of one woman's greed. The next morning, I visited the community center again. The cots were still lined up in rows. Some residents sat in flimsy chairs, staring at nothing. Others shuffled around with walkers, looking lost in the strange space. "When can we go home?" Mrs. Thompson's mother asked me, her wrinkled hand gripping my arm. "I miss my window. I miss watching the birds." "Soon," I lied, patting her hand. "We're working on it." On my way home, I stopped at the county recorder's office. The woman at the desk knew me by now. "Back again?" she asked kindly. "Find anything useful yet?" "Not enough," I admitted. "I need property records for the HOA office." She brought me a thick file. "You know, I heard about what happened to your parents' place. My aunt was in a nursing home for years. I can't imagine someone just destroying it like that." I smiled gratefully, opening the file. There it was. The property boundaries for the HOA building, the easements, the utility connections. I made copies of everything, marking the spots where digging would be dangerous. The neighborhood had become a battlefield. Some neighbors, like the Thompsons, brought us food and offered spare rooms for the nursing home residents. Mrs. Rodriguez made dozens of calls to find temporary housing. Mr. Wilson's son offered his construction company's help to rebuild. But others, friends of Mrs. Jenkins, turned against us. Someone spray-painted rule breakers on our mailbox. Anonymous letters appeared, claiming the nursing home had been bringing down property values for years. At the grocery store, people I'd known for decades suddenly found the floor fascinating when I walked by. One woman whispered loudly to her friend, "Their family never belonged here anyway." I hid the bulldozer keys in my sock drawer and tried to focus on legal solutions. Tanya was building a solid case. We had evidence of corruption, of procedural violations. But court cases take months, sometimes years. Our elderly residents needed homes now. Then came the final push. I was sitting on our front porch that evening, staring at the rubble of the nursing home, when a black SUV cruised slowly past. The window rolled down and Derek Jenkins pointed his phone at me, snapping photos. Then his face appeared, laughing. "Nice pile of trash you've got there," he called out. "Don't worry. My facility has plenty of space for those old people, if they can afford our rates." The SUV sped away, leaving me shaking with rage. I went inside and pulled the bulldozer keys from my sock drawer, looking at them. I thought about right and wrong, about laws and justice, about revenge and consequences. I thought about Mrs. Thompson's mother asking for her window back, about my mom's tears, about Derek Jenkins laughing at our pain. I also thought about prison, about throwing away my future, about becoming the very thing I hated. Someone who destroyed others' property. My phone buzzed with a text from Tanya. Court date set for 3 months from now. Best I could do. Sorry. 3 months. 90 days of elderly people on cots. 90 days of Mrs. Jenkins walking free. 90 days of Derek Jenkins building his business on our misery. I checked the weather forecast. No moon tonight. Perfect darkness. I'm going out for a while, I told my parents. Don't wait up. My phone buzzed at 2:30 a.m. It was time. I slipped on black clothes and grabbed my backpack filled with maps, tools, and the final piece of evidence Tanya had discovered. A hidden bank transfer from Derek to the HOA account the day before our demolition. My dad's voice startled me in the dark kitchen. His eyes were red-rimmed, still haunted by what he'd come home to. Just getting some air, I lied, hating myself for it. Can't sleep. He nodded slowly. Mrs. Thompson called again. The new facility Derek moved her to. They're charging triple what we did. She can't afford it past next month. Something hardened inside me. I squeezed his shoulder and walked out. The street was silent as I made my way to the storage unit where I'd hidden the bulldozer. I'd practiced starting it silently 3 times already. My hands trembled less than I expected as I climbed into the driver's seat. I drove slowly through back roads, avoiding the main streets. The rumble seemed impossibly loud in the quiet night. A dog barked somewhere. I froze, waiting, but no lights came on. When the HOA office appeared around the corner, I paused. This small, smug building had destroyed so many lives with a single piece of paper. Through the windshield, I could see the Neighborhood Excellence Award plaque gleaming in the moonlight. My phone buzzed. A text from Tanya. Derek's filing more paperwork tomorrow to block your parents' rebuild permit. Also found evidence he's buying 3 more properties on your street. That did it. I gunned the engine. The first crash shocked even me. Glass exploded outward as the bulldozer blade hit the front doors. Alarm bells started ringing, but I knew from my research that the security company had a 20-minute response time. Plenty of time. This is for Mrs. Thompson, I shouted as I backed up and hit the wall again. This is for my parents. Another hit. The roof began to cave. 15 minutes later, the building was a pile of rubble. I worked methodically, pushing the debris to the edges. Then I pulled out the supplies from the bulldozer's back compartment. Quick dry cement, line paint, pre-made signs. For hours of furious work, sweat poured down my face as I smoothed the last section of cement. My back screamed in pain, but looking at what I had accomplished sent a thrill through me. Where the HOA office had stood that morning was now a smooth, perfect parking lot. I planted the sign at the entrance, Golden Sunset Care Visitor Parking. As I drove away, the first hints of dawn painted the sky pink. A police car cruised slowly past me, heading toward the HOA office. The officer inside gave me a friendly wave, not connecting the dirty, exhausted landscaper with what he was about to discover. My phone rang. It was Derek. "You might want to turn on your local news," he said, voice dripping with satisfaction. "Your parents' rebuild permit just got permanently denied. And guess what? I bought the land next door, too. Going to build a parking garage." I smiled into the phone. "That's funny, Derek, because I think you're going to be busy with other problems very soon. What's that supposed to?" I hung up and turned onto my street, hearing sirens in the distance growing louder. A text from Tanya appeared. "It's all over the news. Anonymous tip to reporters about the corruption evidence going to the DA this morning. They're waiting at the HOA parking lot for comment. The parking lot that didn't exist anymore." My heart pounded as I pulled into our driveway. Had I just made everything worse? What if they traced it back to me? What if Derek somehow turned this against my family again? I walked into the house to find my parents at the kitchen table, staring at their phones in disbelief. "Have you seen—" my mother started. The doorbell rang. I opened our front door to find 5 news cameras pointed at my face. Reporters shouted questions about HOA corruption and demolition permits. Behind them stood Mrs. Thompson, leaning on her walker with at least 15 other former residents of our nursing home. "There he is," Mrs. Thompson called out. "The boy who's been bringing us meals every day since we got kicked out." My mouth hung open. What was happening? A reporter thrust a microphone at me. "Your family's nursing home was illegally demolished last month. Now the HOA office has mysteriously been replaced with a parking lot labeled for your business. Any comment?" I stammered something about being shocked by the news when my phone buzzed with a text from Tanya. "Play dumb. Trust me." Channel 7's reporter stepped forward. "We've received documents showing Mrs. Jenkins accepted bribes from her son to target your parents' business. Do you feel vindicated?" Before I could answer, police sirens wailed in the distance. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I need to check on my parents," I mumbled, backing inside. My father grabbed my arm as soon as the door closed. "Did you do this?" he whispered. I couldn't lie to him again. I had to do something. My mother's face went pale. "They'll arrest you." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Tanya clutching her legal briefcase. "Don't say another word," she ordered. The security camera at the gas station on Maple caught someone driving a bulldozer at 3:00 a.m. The footage is blurry, but a loud commotion outside made us all jump. Through the window, we saw Mrs. Jenkins arrive in her silver Mercedes.
Screeching to a halt in front of our house, Derek's black SUV pulled up seconds later. "You did this?" Mrs. Jenkins screamed, pointing at our house while cameras rolled. "You destroyed our office." Derek grabbed her arm. "Mom, shut up. We're on camera." "I don't care. They ruined everything." Her face twisted with rage. "First they run an illegal business, then they attack our property." A police officer stepped between Mrs. Jenkins and the reporters. "Ma'am, we're investigating the situation. Please calm down. Investigate them," she shrieked, pointing at our house again. "They're the criminals. We had every right to tear down their illegal nursing home." The crowd went silent. The police officer slowly turned to Mrs. Jenkins. "Ma'am, did you just admit to ordering the demolition of the nursing home?" Derek's face drained of color. "My mother is upset. She doesn't know what she's saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Mrs. Jenkins yanked her arm free. "That nursing home was breaking our rules." The board voted. Another reporter stepped forward. "We have documents showing the board never legally voted on this matter." "That's a lie," she snapped. "And is it also a lie that your son owns a competing elder care facility?" The reporter pressed. The crowd murmured. Mrs. Thompson stepped forward, her walker scraping on the concrete. "You charged my friend Martha $8,000 a month at your fancy facility after you bulldozed our home." she said, her voice shaking but clear. She died last week because she couldn't afford her heart medication after paying your bills. The cameras swung to Mrs. Thompson, then back to Mrs. Jenkins, who suddenly looked trapped. An unmarked police car pulled up. 2 detectives got out, heading straight for Derek. Mr. Jenkins, we have some questions about certain financial transactions between you and the HOA accounts. What happened next played out like a movie I couldn't believe I was watching. Derek tried to run. Mrs. Jenkins had a complete meltdown on camera. 3 board members showed up, claiming they'd never approved the demolition of our nursing home. Tanya slipped away during the chaos, pulling me aside behind our house. Security footage shows a municipal works truck at the HOA office last night. Official-looking workers in uniforms. No one would connect that to you. She smiled. Also, that parking lot technically paved on county land, not HOA property. Their building was built 6 feet over the line. I found the original surveys. 6 weeks later, my parents reopened Golden Sunset Care with proper permits. The county fast-tracked everything after the scandal made national news. Mrs. Jenkins and Derek faced multiple charges: fraud, corruption, illegal demolition, elder abuse. The investigation into Derek's facility uncovered horrible conditions. Mr. Thompson became the new HOA president. His first act was to approve our expanded facility plans and grant us official use of the new parking lot, which technically belonged to the county anyway. Today, I watched Mrs. Thompson move back into her old room, now freshly painted her favorite color. "You're a good boy," she said, patting my hand. "Sometimes you have to break things to fix them properly." As I helped her unpack, I saw Derek's fancy elder care center being converted into affordable senior housing through my window. Sometimes karma needs a little push from a bulldozer. I saved you some cake from the welcome back party. I told Mrs. Thompson, "Just don't tell my mom it's not on your diet plan." She winked at me. Some rules are meant to be broken, aren't they? Got your own HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments below. Like and share if justice served with a side of cement hits different. This is part 2 of the Marcus HOA series. Wait till you hear what happened in Riverside Heights. Thanks for watching HOA Tragedies, where common sense takes a vacation and karma runs the show. Like, comment, and subscribe for your weekly dose of mayhem.